All right, let's dive into a puzzle that sits right at the very heart of Christian history. It's a chronological mystery, really, and it asks us to look at the timeline of one of the most significant events ever through a completely different lens.
You know the story. We've all heard it. Jesus was crucified on a Friday. He rose on a Sunday. For 2,000 years, that's been a foundational belief for billions of people. But what happens when you actually start counting the hours? A really fascinating question pops up. Does this familiar timeline actually line up with the prophecies that were made about it? And this is the verse that sparks the entire debate. Jesus himself gives this incredibly specific sign, the sign of Jonah. Not just 3 days, but he's explicit, 3 days and 3 nights. This one prophecy creates a mathematical problem for the traditional timeline that people have been wrestling with for centuries.
So here's how we're going to get to the bottom of this. First, we'll break down the puzzle itself. Then we'll decode some crucial clues from the first century. After that, we'll explore the alternate timelines, take a fair look at the arguments for the traditional view, and finally uncover why the specific day matters so much. Okay, so let's start with the basic math. The issue with the Good Friday story isn't about some deep, complex theology. Nope, it's simple arithmetic. So when you lay it all out like this, the problem becomes crystal clear. If Jesus was buried late Friday afternoon and rose on Sunday morning, well, you can count parts of 3 days, right? Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But you only get 2 nights, Friday night and Saturday night. That leaves us 1 night short of what Matthew 12:40 says. So what gives? How do we solve this? Well, to find the answer, we have to kind of transport ourselves back in time. We need to get into a first century mindset and understand how they thought about time and religious holidays. These are the clues that unlock the whole thing. First, and this is absolutely critical, the Hebraic day didn't start at midnight like ours does. It started at sunset, just like in Genesis. There was evening and there was morning. What this means is that Thursday evening, for example, was actually the beginning of Friday. This one little fact completely changes how we count the nights. The second huge clue is the high Sabbath. You see, the Passover festival had its own special Sabbaths, these high days, which were days of rest that could land on any day of the week. And the Gospel of John specifically says the Sabbath right after the crucifixion was one of these high days. That means it wasn't necessarily the normal weekly Sabbath that always falls on a Saturday. And this right here just drives the point home. If you look at the original Greek text of Matthew 28:1, the word it uses for Sabbath is actually plural. It says the women went to the tomb after the Sabbaths. Plural. This is a massive linguistic clue, basically screaming at us that there might have been 2 Sabbaths that week, a high Sabbath for the festival and the regular weekly Sabbath. Okay, so now we've got our clues, right? A day starts at sunset, and we have the real possibility of 2 Sabbaths. Armed with that, we can start to build some alternate timelines that might just solve this 3 days and 3 nights puzzle once and for all. So let's imagine a Wednesday crucifixion. If Jesus was buried right before sunset on Wednesday, the clock starts ticking. You get Wednesday night, that's night 1. Thursday night, night 2. Friday night, night 3. And then the days. Thursday, that's day 1. Friday, day 2. And Saturday, day 3. This timeline fits perfectly. It gives us a high Sabbath on Thursday, the regular Sabbath on Saturday, and it literally fulfills the 3 days and 3 nights sign. The Thursday theory is another strong possibility. In this scenario, Jesus is buried before sunset on Thursday. That gives us Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night. 3 full nights. And the days would be Friday, Saturday, and a part of Sunday. This model also accounts for that 2 Sabbath clue and gives us the full 3 nights before the discovery on Sunday morning. Now, of course, a tradition that has stood for 2 millennia has some very strong arguments behind it. So it's only fair that we take a serious look at the reasoning that supports the traditional Good Friday view. So defenders of the Friday view have a few key points. First, they suggest that 3 days and 3 nights might just be a figure of speech, a Jewish idiom, where any part of a day counts as a whole day. So a little bit of Friday, all of Saturday, and a bit of Sunday could count as 3 days. Others argue that the Last Supper was the actual Passover meal, which would put the crucifixion on Friday. And finally, you just can't ignore the massive weight of church history, which has consistently held on to the Friday timeline for centuries. So, we've got this fascinating debate: Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. But you might be wondering, does it really matter? Well, as it turns out, The exact timing seems to be tied into a series of incredibly profound prophetic patterns, almost like a divine clockwork embedded in the ancient Jewish feasts. Just look at this parallel with the Passover lamb. It's absolutely stunning. The law required a lamb to be chosen on the 10th day of the month, which lines up perfectly with Jesus' triumphal entry. That lamb was then inspected for 4 days to make sure it was flawless. In that exact same 4-day window, Jesus was interrogated by everyone, the priests, the politicians, and in the end, even Pilate had to say, "I find no fault in him." The lamb was sacrificed on the afternoon of the 14th, the exact timing that both the Wednesday and Thursday theories hit perfectly, but a Friday crucifixion just can't accommodate. And that number 4, it isn't random. 4 days of intense public grilling. This specific time frame, from the triumphal entry to the crucifixion, it really suggests there's a deliberate prophetic pattern at work here, not just a bunch of coincidences. But the pattern doesn't stop there. During Passover week, there was another incredibly important feast, the Day of First Fruits. This was a celebration for the start of the harvest, where the priest would offer up the very first cuttings of grain. And according to the law in Leviticus, this had to happen on the day after the Sabbath, which, following the weekly Saturday Sabbath, would always be a Sunday. And here is where it all just clicks into place. The Apostle Paul comes right out and calls the resurrected Christ the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep. His resurrection on a Sunday, the exact day of the Feast of First Fruits, is presented as the ultimate fulfillment of this harvest festival. He is the first and greatest part of a new spiritual harvest. So the crucial point is this. This whole debate about what day it was, it's so much more than just getting a calendar right. It's about asking whether these events were part of a divinely orchestrated timeline, a prophetic clock, where every single moment, from the choosing of the lamb to the offering of the first fruits, was fulfilled with breathtaking precision. Which leaves us with a final question for you to think about. For some people, seeing this kind of chronological perfection is powerful evidence of a divine plan, and it strengthens their faith. For others, the core truth of the resurrection is so powerful it doesn't need a perfectly aligned calendar. So what do you think? Does solving this puzzle deepen the meaning, or does the power of a story exist beyond the details of the timeline? It's definitely a question worth pondering. Thanks for joining me.